Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending tonight's event, Communicating Your Brand for Job Seeking and Professional Success. I'm your host, Jason Lambert from the College of Business at Texas Women's University. And I also want to recognize my graduate assistant, Dalia Barajas, who will be monitoring the chat room. Wave, Dalia. She's very busy helping us out today. And if you have any questions, you can post them in the chat and we will ask as many as we can if time permits, or so long as it has not been already answered during tonight's interview. So please keep your microphones muted. They should be muted upon entry, and I believe we have control over that. But in the event that you have control, please keep it muted because this event is being recorded. Now let's turn to tonight's guest. Having over 2 decades of professional experience, certified coach Rogers Vigne has a strong and passionate desire to see everyone reach their professional goals. He fully understands the various stages of professional evolution, from student to junior professional, to high-level professional, to expert, to industry-influencing business leader. Rogers started working corporate-level jobs at age 15. He earned degrees in both information sciences and leadership, certifications in various skill sets. He speaks publicly and is a former Toastmaster. He also works and travels internationally and has served many years within a world-renowned Christian-based ministry. His company, My Digital Self LLC, also known as MDS LLC, is a career coaching agency that provides career development and coaching services to individuals, organized groups, and small to medium-sized businesses. MDS specializes in assisting professionals in the discovery of their career niches and professional development potential, and will help you identify, define, and employ optimal productivity and career management techniques for sustainable long-term success. Rogers has worked with several Fortune 500 companies, including Chase, Southwest Airlines, and GameStop. MDS provides ways to enhance employee productivity and efficiency day to day. And Rogers' ultimate goal is to enhance the human condition through efforts that make people more self and opportunistically aware by empowering others to take ownership of their professional development, openly share knowledge, increase confidence, and expand their expertise. Using the chat or reaction button, please help me welcome our special guest today, Rogers Vigne. Rogers, thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. And hello, everybody. How y'all doing tonight? Not to get talk back, but I appreciate it.
Right. So before we get into the questions, Roger, first I want to ask, can you tell us a little bit about what you do and why is it important to have a coach?
Okay, so what I do is, well, I'll take it back to my roots. I'm the oldest of 5. I have 4 younger brothers, right? So for those of us who are in the audience that are also the oldest, you kind of get where I'm about to go. It's our job to kind of go out there, figure stuff out, come back and tell our siblings how to avoid some of the stuff that we ran into. So I grew up in that particular role. And what happened professionally is I found myself in that role as I progressed in my career. And eventually I found myself trying to make life easier for my fellow co-workers, which expanded to their friends, which expanded over time to even my bosses, levels 1, 2, and 3 higher than myself. So I found I had a passion and a penchant for helping people remove roadblocks and get more self-understanding so they can move forward. So that's one of the things that helped propel me and inspire me to start the company, this company back in 2004.
Oh, wow. Okay, interesting. So in 2004, that's when you started MDS?
Right. So what happened is a couple things. So what happened is that I started off as a resume writing company. I was helping people write resumes, and I was creating online profiles before the days of LinkedIn. And in doing that, I found out that more than half of the people I was doing resumes for hated the jobs that I was helping them get resume, which I found to be counterproductive. So yeah, okay, I can help you with this resume, help you get a job. I do some interview prep with them, everything. But now you're going to a job that you can't stand. What's the point? You spend at least a third of your life or more at doing this, in this place, doing this particular thing, why can't that be a part of your evolution, a part of your joy, right? Of getting up, especially on Monday mornings. So I have my professional background is in project management. So I have over 20 years of experience doing that. So what I tried to come up with was back then was a way to assist people with finding out kind of who they were professionally and then redirect their job seeking and professional development efforts toward those jobs instead of doing what they were currently doing. And that was before I even knew what coaching was. That's before I knew who Tony Robbins was, or John Maxwell, or any other guys that's out here doing this stuff, or Bob Proctor and people and such. So I started doing that, and I created my own methodology of how to help someone get professional clarity, identity, and direction, which is what I use now with MDS.
Okay, so those things that you mentioned, it reminds me a lot of this idea of a brand that we hear so often now. That's important for everyone to create for themselves, whether they're a business owner or if they're seeking a job in networking. It's real important now for we understand to have this brand. Why is communicating your brand so important in today's job market? And what are some tips, some key things that people can do in order to communicate their brand well?
Okay. I like to I'm going to use a very personal analogy and to answer your question. Let's say you, as a person, you go to the gym and you work out and you make yourself look the best you can physically. Then you work and you make money, so now you're financially stable. Then you find out how to dress yourself. Now you dress real good, and now you looking good. You know how to handle yourself. You're making money. I mean, you just got yourself all just done up, right? You are everything. You walk in the room and attention is grabbing to you, right? Mm-hmm. Or you're gonna hold up a sign that says, "Okay, the first person who approaches me can have me. First person who asks me to marry you, first person asks me out, that's you can have me." Are you going to do that?
No.
I'm not. Why? Because wait a minute. You will say, wait a minute. I have these things. I've done all this work for myself. I know who I am. I know my value. I know, what I have to offer. Okay, you do that in the dating world quick. Nobody can run up on you just after you've done all that work and just say, hey, you come here. I'll take you. Then why do we do that with our careers? Think about it. You go to college, you get these degrees, you get these trainings, you learn how to do all this stuff, you read all these books, you write these papers, you make these grades, you get all this stuff, and then you hold up a piece of paper with a resume with all your stuff on it and say, okay, the first company that wants me can have me. That's counterproductive. And the reason why I understand your brand is so important is because you, just like you know your worth in the dating world, you need to know who you are, your worth professionally, and not just getting that first gig, not just getting that first good date or whatever the situation is. You want longevity. You're not trying to just get the first good thing and then let it stay there. You want to continue to grow. You want to continue to evolve. You want that relationship, whether it be professional or personal, to have longevity to it, to have value over time. So you're going to change and grow, become more. Professionally, do you want to do the same thing professionally? That's why knowing your brand, knowing your career identity, who you are, is extremely important. And also understanding the have an actual identity and understand where that identity can take you directionally is extremely important.
That makes a lot of sense, because without doing that, I like the analogy that you gave about working out, looking fit. And so you know that you're the stuff, right? But if you go out there, like you have that piece of paper, you're not different from anybody else then, right? It seems like that's what you're saying. You need to build on what you spent all that time doing so you can be unique.
Well, one of the things I want to point out here is that it's the value you have is there regardless. It depends on whether you recognize it and you take advantage of it. Because just like in the daily world, you don't know you all that. But somebody can say, shoot, I know she all that, so I'm going to go ahead and get her and use her for my benefit since she don't know. That's the same thing corporations are doing. That's the same thing any place is doing that with people that don't understand their actual worth and know where they are, or even have a directional goals that are set or systems that's going to produce a goal achieving system for themselves in place. Because if you don't, then somebody's going to get the value out of you anyway. Whether they maximize it for you just wouldn't be on their priority. They'll maximize it for them. You know, and that's extremely important. I'm gonna give you guys just a quick story of how that was a situation with me, and I even talked about this on my podcast. So I worked at a particular company in a particular division for 5 years. I came in as a level 1 analyst, right? So I came in and my goal was to get to level 4. There were 4 levels of analysts in this particular role. So my coworkers knew that's what I wanted to do. My immediate supervisor and my VP above that person also knew these were my goals. This is what I was trying to do. So from day one, my goal was to master my craft, master my role, and to expand myself so I can, you know, have longevity in my career. So year 1, I smashed everything that was expected of me and more. So they gave me a little bit more to get to level 2, right? So year 2, I smashed it again and gave it even more because they said, okay, do these extra things and you can get to level 2. Year 3, I'm doing my stuff, other people's stuff. I'm training other people, you know, how to do it, everything. They say, Rogers, you're almost there to level 2. You're almost there. Here, take these additional things, right? So here I am, year 4, going into year 5, following along the same track. All right, I'm trying to get to level 2 because level 2 must be all that for me, you know, for a four level for analytical role. One of my coworkers, I guess she got like frustrated, you know, a Latina sister that I work with. She came over and she just dropped this long alphanumeric number written on a piece of paper on my desk. She said, "Look this up and get the heck out of here." And she just walked off, and I'm like, What is she talking about? It was an internal requisition for a role. So I looked it up internally for the company, and it was the assistant vice president of strategic operations. That was the role that she had, you know, on there. I'm like, I'm a BA level 1, working my tail off for almost the last 5 years trying to become a BA level 2. What the heck is this about? You know, I'm not even remote. This is past, you know, the 4th level that I'm ultimately trying to get to in this role. But when I read the job description for the AVP role that she gave me, I was already doing all of that. I had already been doing all of that for like 2 years.
Wow.
I just didn't know it.
Wow.
But my boss knew it. My VP knew it, right? And apparently some of my coworkers knew it, but I didn't know. So I was sitting there working my tail off, you know, for that at that role, at that pay, you know, for years, not understanding my own worth. So just to kind of cap the story off, so I saw the name of the hiring manager, and I knew the guy, you know, because I used to give him a hard time for being a Cowboys fan because I'm from New Orleans. Sorry, Cowboys fans, I'm a Saints fan. So so I went over to his office to talk to him about this role. He thought I was coming over to mess over the Cowboys had just lost, which, you know, happens sometimes. But I would say, no, I'm not trying to be funny today. I'm serious, you know, because he was a senior VP. I said, listen, you have this role open, and I was curious if you know, this is something that you might be open for me to go for. He said, are you interested? For real? I said, yeah, I am. He said, well, I know about your work. You blowing people out the water over there. You come over here, you ain't got to worry about it. I didn't have to interview, nothing. I got promoted from a BA1 to an AVP in a day. You know, so at the end of the day, it was a nice ending to the story, but imagine how many of us never really understand what our brand is, what our identity is, what, you know, where we are and who we are professionally. If you don't know, you can't get the benefit, but other people begin to benefit in the meantime, which is what happened to me. You're muted.
That's so true, and it happens so often. Excuse me for that. So, when you're at a job, it's very difficult to navigate your career, as you were saying, and you need to be able to build your brand. Um, I guess let's step back a bit, and I want to ask you, while you're searching for that job, what would be some definite don'ts, some false assumptions, or other mistakes that people make when looking for a job? And then afterwards, if you could tell us what are some of the definite do's, or ways how we can maybe avoid these mistakes when looking for a job.
Well, first off, again, I like to drive it home to people. I like to attribute it, the job search with the dating search a little bit, because people take that dating part personally. Saying even if they don't take their career search personally, they can kind of put those two things together a little bit. So, what are the steps you would do in a dating search? Does it start externally or does it start internally? Right? So the same way you would approach the dating will be, in my opinion, the same way you would approach your professional search as well. Understanding who you are, what you want your career to produce for you, and where you're trying to go. Have that, understand self first. That's the number one thing, right? And that's a definite do. So don't go out there and hold up that sign saying, please somebody come get me, and think it's going to work out ultimately for your best. Now well, in today's trying times, I understand that people sometimes got to get in somewhere so you can like pay bills and stuff like that. I'm not talking about scenarios like that. I'm talking about for the long term, have a long-term strategy in place, which starts with understanding self. Another thing is to make sure that you are presenting, once you know self, present your best self. When I say present your best self is you have to pretend, and especially at this stage of your careers, I would say you're pretending like you're kind of in an interview or being reviewed, for your dream role and whatever, and then look like basically at all times, right? So it's, and life today is so digital. It was digital before March of 2020. Now is even extremely digital. So your digital presence, your digital persona is just as important, if not in this case right now, even more important, because they're not going to see you as much physically as your physical appearance. So who you are online is who people think you are, period.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the first things that I do, like if I'm interviewing somebody, like when I was doing interviews and hiring VAs, business analysts to my team, I would search them. I would look. I want to see how they're presenting themselves to the world. What things they feel is important. And if I see a bunch of crazy memes and curse words and saying we living it up, hey lit, all that other stuff, every other post online that's public to everybody, I'm not there on their friends list. I can see this. This person is representing me if I bring them on my team. Every organization, every true leader is looking at everyone on their team that they bring in as an extension of themselves. So you want to make sure that you're presenting your best self at all times, which is a big mistake I see a lot of people, are making even right now, in the digital world. Another major thing is to make sure your story about professionally matches across the board. What you say you did and do matches what it says that you didn't do online. You don't want them to find out, that some of the stuff that you say you were, the manager, the manager of XYZ, but you find out that you were just one of the people that report to the manager, and the manager allowed to do stuff every now and then. You don't want them to hit those conflicting stories. So make sure your stuff is synergized. There's a list of things here, do's and don'ts. Those what I mentioned are pretty big. Another don't, because you're gonna run into a lot of challenging scenarios and people in your career. As you move forward to other opportunities, do not take the bait and try to talk poorly about past scenarios too much, or especially past people. Don't insult previous employers, because what I have learned is that I have gotten the most referrals and great pushes for new positions at other places from people I couldn't stand at my previous jobs. I've gotten more recommendations from them than people that I liked, which is, I can never understand that. But I guess it's because you don't feed into what they're kind of putting out. They're like, oh my goodness, if this person can deal with me, they could deal with anyone. And they tend to feel guilty, I guess, from a human aspect, to say, look, I treat them so bad, I treated her so bad. Let me say something nice about them. And those would be the ones that recommend you. Those would be the ones that push you up. Those would be the ones that, give you the push you need to get over into the next levels that you're going to. So that's another huge one as well, managing those relationships.
You know what? That is so true. I've been so surprised and shocked by references that I get or good things being said about me from folks who I thought didn't like me, right? Because these could be bosses, employees, because it seemed like our interactions, almost kind of like that borderline. I'm walking on eggshells so to avoid conflict. But I think one of my mantras is that, don't be upset about the person's personality, if you're upset about the issue or the situation, right? Because everyone is different. And if you just think of that as, okay, it's just a different personality. Think of it like that. It kind of, for me, it helps me kind of overlook some of those faults or things that they do that kind of rub me the wrong way. So that, like you said, you don't leave off with a bad impression on that person. And the same person who you thought didn't like you, now they're giving you references. And a lot of people, it takes a lot of high degree of, I guess, like emotional intelligence is a new buzzword today, right? To be able to do something like that. Wouldn't you agree?
Rename stuff that's all kind of already.
I know.
One of the things I do that helps me do that with difficult people, what I literally do in my own brain. Okay, first let me take it one step back. One is, you are in control of, take ownership and control of your relationships. Period. Do not allow the power to be put into other people's hands. Take full control of that. A way you can do that is completely separate the person, the human being, from what they did, if you can. So can't stand what they did, but try not to attribute that to the human. So when you find yourself distancing yourself, you're distancing yourself from a behavior and not a human. So when you interact with that human, you can still smile, you can still, do what you have to do professionally, but have disdain for what they did, right? That way it's kind of hard to take retribution out on a behavior, because you've already removed it from the person. Right. But you can take actions against a human if you still have them attached to that behavior. And that's a way that I've been able to use to assist me in dealing with difficult people, or like, some people that are more challenging to work with. Another thing is, some people, no matter what the age is, their professional maturity is just not as high, right? So another thing I do is that I remove, it is impossible to get angry when you don't have the expectation from someone. What you get angry about is a missed expectation. You're not angry with the person, you're angry with the expectation you've attached to that person. Now you're expecting a certain thing from that person and you're not getting it, and that will make you angry. So what you do is that you remove the expectation from them. I've even gotten to a point in my head, like, a person not mature enough to handle a situation, they're talking to me crazy or acting a certain way, I don't expect them to be mature. And who do we not expect to be mature? A baby. So in my mind, I'm almost kind of smiling on the inside, because I'm like, oh, they don't know what they're doing. It's okay.
It's all about perception.
So in my head, and they're wondering why I'm not getting angry, it's because I don't even look at you as an adult in my head right now. You're just a baby. It's okay. I'm not going to talk to you as a baby. I'm going to keep talking to you regular, but you can't access that part of me because my expectation for you has dropped. You know what I'm saying? And that's to manage me. That's why I said my first statement was, you are to take ownership and take control of your relationships.
Mm. Thank you. Very interesting. Thank you for that. I like that. I like that a lot. Um, so, so well, when we talk about the fact that people trash their former boss or whatever, I think one thing that people don't realize is, especially in the interview setting, and that's happened before, is that I automatically think when I'm interviewing someone, well, what are you saying about me and my company or me and my company? What are some other um, some tips for like virtual conferencing, because everyone is doing virtual conferencing and interviewing now, but overall general tips for interviewing. But what are some specific tips for interviewing using this video conferencing format that we're all doing during this pandemic?
One, turn your phone ringer off. You know, and if the phone is not required, I would either say put it away from you so you can't even see it light up. You know, because like my phone is right here, but it's black. But if it came on and you see me like looking at my phone, you know, I'm gonna turn around because I didn't mention it. But so that's one thing, because you don't want to have any loud distractions around you. If you can control that your environment as much as possible, that's huge. Another thing is to go ahead and do a test run. Some people use Zoom. Some people use Microsoft Teams. Some people use Hangouts. Well, what used to be called Hangouts is Google a video. Some people use some people use what's the one that Microsoft has?
The the Google, did you say Meets or Hangouts yet? Is it Microsoft Teams? Yeah, you said Teams.
And there's another one that a lot of companies use.
Got it.
WebEx. Yes, thank you so much from Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. WebEx. That's the other one. You know, so whatever the platform is being used, you know, try to do a test run. You know, like before I got on this call with you, even though I've used my Zoom 1,000 times, try to test out anyway. I pulled it up for myself. I made sure I looked okay. Made sure I have, you know, something crawling across my face digitally or whatever. You don't know what to be. Make sure my sound worked, you know, and everything. So make sure you get that set up. Make sure you manage your lighting, especially for those of us with blessed with a little bit more melanin than others. We need to make sure we have lighting. I have 2 lights shining on my face right now to help me out right now. So make sure your lighting is good. Try to have, do business attire. I'm not saying necessarily have to have shirt and tie. Like I don't have on a tie right now, but you want to make sure you present yourself a step above from the type of meeting that you have, unless the type of meeting you have calls for something you to be a little scaled back in your attire. Otherwise, try to step it up just a little bit. Test your internet connection, and try to turn off other things you may have around that could be taken away from bandwidth. That's another huge thing. And if you think you may have a low internet connection or whatever, go ahead and unplug the Alexa and unplug a few other things that could be using the bandwidth for that moment while you're doing this. And try to be intentional with your background and what they can see. Try to keep your background blank or very presenting. Like if I was doing, let's say I was interviewing for a job right now. As much as I love my company, you will not see my company logo right here. You will see something that says, Mr. Rogers Vigne, blah, 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 right here. That way I want them to constantly see me and see my name and my professional designations. That because I'm being very intentional of what you see. The reason you see Career Coach talk behind me is because I have a podcast. I really want y'all to check it out. So you want to make sure that you're intentional with that as well. People can see you. They're listening to you. Enunciate. Sit up. Look directly into the camera instead of always looking at the screen. Like this is me looking at Doc right here. It doesn't look like I'm connected with you right now. But if I lift my eyes and look directly at the camera, now I'm connecting with you. So those are some things you can do to enhance your talking via virtual.
Yeah, thank you. As you mentioned, all of those tips, they were excellent reminders. I found myself sitting up, looking directly into the camera because I was literally just watching you, and I said, "Oh yeah, I know these things too." But it just goes to show that it's always good to have a helpful reminder. Let's see. So we talked about interviews. What about resumes? What are some And you mentioned that earlier in your career, you did a lot of resume writing. So what are maybe your top 2 or 3 tips that you would give for writing a resume?
Okay. The first thing that comes to my mind is relevance. Um, you want to make sure that I like to read job descriptions directly, for whatever role that I may be writing a resume for somebody to have, or even while I was writing my own resume. I'm looking at the job description that is being provided by the HR person or the recruiter or whatever. That will tell you straight up, the buzzwords, power words that they're looking for, right there. I would almost, and it may sound simple, but you repeat a lot of the stuff right back to them, you know. And also a couple things that may not be in there that are still relevant. So you want to make sure your resume is relevant, right? Another thing is, mentioned keywords a second ago, is format. Depending on the type of job that you're going for, like for example, if you're going for a job that requires a lot of specific skills, you may want to write a resume that highlights those skills, right? That highlights those skills very much so. But if you're going for leadership, and I told this to several of my clients, and they're like, really, that's why I haven't gotten leadership? This is why I'm just looking at your resume. The reason is that a lot of times they could care less about your skills in a lot of those cases. I know they may sound crazy a little bit, but think about the people that you have reported to your jobs. If you look at your skill set and look at their skill set to actually do the job, you're like, I know more than them. How many of us feel like that? The reason why they be in those roles, they get those roles, is not about their skill set, it's about what they can get up to do, what they can do through other people. What type of results are they achieving through teams, through other individuals? How are they positioning other people without knowing all the details themselves skill-wise? How are they positioning other people and processes to be successful, and what do those results look like? So be extremely quantitative. The ability to, thank you, somebody like Bridget. Okay, Bridget knows some stuff right there. She's talking before she get to the stuff before I get to it. It's almost a difference between being a person who's a subject matter expert, as opposed to being a person who's an influencer. Because like when I started doing my career, I started identifying 3 levels of people. There's the subject matter expert. That's the person who knows stuff a whole lot, and know the people, the processes inside and out. I want to know that person. The second person is the person who has positional power to make decisions. All right. Sometimes it's the same person, sometimes it's not. But one of the main people you want to know are who has influential power in this organization. It's a subject matter expert, and it's not always a person who has the power to actually make the decisions. Think about how some households are. You want the man to buy something for the house. Sometimes you don't talk to him, you talk to the wife. That's the influencer. For all my married people in the room, So, or if
That's true. You ain't never lied. My wife runs it.
Something, you don't necessarily try to talk to the mom, you talk to the kid. Hey, the influencer in that scenario. So in the workplace, you want to find out who those people are, who has the ear of the people with the power to make the decisions. So that's a major thing as well. And we were talking about the resume, right? So I'll talk about the format. So the reason I brought that up is because you want to format your resume based on the level of world that you're getting to, and make sure that's on the first page. Make sure that your result, if you're looking for a management, talk about your results, make it quantitative, and put it first thing first, right there in front of their face. And have a strong blurb, exposition about yourself, a few lines, but then make sure a lot of that power stuff and results is sitting on that first page. Cover letters, some people read them, some people don't. I think you should always have one, but it's depending on who's doing the hiring. If it's sometimes they read them, sometimes they do, but I would put more more stock into a strong resume, especially that first page of the resume. Because a lot of times they don't go past that first page if they don't see stuff to make them want to, scroll up or scroll down. If they're looking at it digitally, or flip the page over if it's more than one page. And in this digital world, what I had started doing is that I have a short video introduction of myself, that they can click on. I record the video, of course, with a different background, of course, say, hey, how you doing? My name is Rogers Vigne, and this is who I am. So, and it also helps me because people aren't doing that. Back in the day, I did a digital online profile for myself. This is before LinkedIn. So they not only got to, see my resume, they could click a link or look at a link on my resume, and it took them to a whole portal that tell them where I can kind of show them even more information about myself.
Thank you. Those are some great tips. Those are some excellent tips. So we talked about the job interview, the resumes. We talked about what do you do when you're in a role. I guess my next question is, let's say you are advanced in your company, you're promoted, but we know leading is different from that of the role of a frontline employee. What advice do you have for the new managers who are leading others for the first time?
A couple things. So one, I'm going to take this opportunity to offer a book, a couple of books, if that's okay, that I know that can help. One of the ways that we measure a new president is we look at their first 90 days. And believe it or not, HR does do that especially with new hires. They look at how your performance has been over a 90-day period. And it's pretty telling. It can kind of tell you what trajectory, you're kind of going to go in the new role. So there's a book called The First 90 Days, and it's really, really good. I'll definitely suggest it for anyone starting a new managerial role or any role, period, but especially for those who are going into leadership. As far as being a first-time manager or whatever, one of the first things I would say is that people are going to they're going to hear you, but they're going to do as you do. They're going to look at you and say that you're the example of what success is. You're the example of what leadership is, and that so they're going to see what things you don't do. It's not going to be like at home, some of our homes, where a parent may say, do as I say, not as I do. That's not going to fly, very much in the professional world. So you want to make sure you are the product, you are the establishment that you want other people to be able to follow first. That's why I talked a lot earlier about mastering your craft and knowing of self and everything. That's going to just emanate from you as you start to lead others. Another thing is to one thing here I kind of wrote down, about this question that you mentioned earlier was the art of managing up, and I don't know because that's it's like a whole other tangent, a little bit of managing up. But I'm curious, could we do like a quick tally of anybody? How many people can say they've heard of the term of the phrase being able to manage up or managing up? Anybody's ever heard of that before? Change my views. I'm looking at that. Anybody give me a thumbs up if you have? Okay, I see a few yeses, not a lot. Okay, so for those who are saying yes, for those who said no, I'm going to kind of gloss over it right quick. So, all right. So managing up is a way for you, even no matter what level you are in your company or in your organization, to manage your boss and to manage your boss's boss. It's a very interesting and very strong skill set to where you get to do two things. One important thing is that you get to define your own narrative, right? When you do that. What I mean is that you get to find, so the VP or whatever 2 levels above you don't know you based on what their subordinate tells them about you only. they know about you for themselves, right? So that's the benefit of managing up. Also, managing up gives you an insight into the vision of what your boss and your boss's bosses want to ultimately see happen. So it allows you to position yourself to be seen and heard a lot more often than normal, because you have engaged yourself with the vision that these guys or ladies have, for the organization or for the group. Plus you get a chance to have give feedback and direction on where you want your role to go. So it's just a powerful thing. I would definitely suggest you guys who don't know about that to kind of look it up. I don't know if there's any books that teaches directly about managing up. I'm sure there are, and if not, I'll write one. But that's definitely something you should look into. And also, as a leader, it'll help you identify who the influencers are on your team, which is another thing you need to know as a manager. Just because you're the manager, you're the leader, that doesn't mean you are the influencer. In no crew, you want to find out who on your team is, has the ear, or who on your team you can provide certain messages that's going to get buy-in that other people are automatically going to follow their lead. So you want to find out who the influencers are on your team. Recognize your team for what they do. Don't sit there and take credit for stuff that you didn't actually do, but make it a team effort all the time. Make them feel like, yes, I'm being recognized for something that, that I'm bringing to the team overall. Share your vision of where you want to go with your team. Make that up front. Don't tell them what you want to just get done. Tell them how you plan on taking for us going together as a team to get there. Make them a part of the journey as much as possible so they can take ownership, which is what you want them to do. You want them to take ownership of the journey along with you. It makes it a heck of a lot easier to manage, to pivot, and everything else. That way, when hard times happen, not if, not maybe, but when there's difficult times and you have to give some not so bad news, they're taking it, oh, this is happening to us, as opposed to this is happening to me. And that's the type of culture you want to build with your team, as a manager. I know for just like if you are an athlete on a team, the owner of the team doesn't have to try to overly inspire everyone to get the championship, because everybody on the team wants the championship, even though it's for different reasons. Okay, so the owner, the coach, and all the people on the team, they all want the championship. The owner wants it because his team becomes more valuable. He can build a new stadium, and he can do this, that, and the other, get more TV spots and all that stuff, and more investors and all that stuff. The team don't care nothing about that. The coach wanted it because the coach gets a higher salary and he gets to go into the hall as a coach and blah, 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 blah. But guess what? The team ultimately really don't care as much about that. But the team, people on the team just get that ring, right? They get to be recognized as a champion for the rest of their lives. That's what they want. They all want the same thing, but for different reasons. So as a leader, I will try to find out what's everybody on the team's ring. What is that? Find out what their ultimate goal is that they want this produced for themselves, and be a part of their journey to get those things. So when they fighting hard for that, they're also fighting hard for you. That's a couple of things I just want to throw out there.
No, thank you very much. One of the things that I want to echo that I think is very powerful is, as a new manager, people forget to articulate that vision, to bring people towards their ring, so to speak. Because I guess transitioning from being an employee, which is totally different from now delegating, assigning work, more planning, being proactive about things. It takes a strong it takes a for some it could be a long transition and a difficult learning curve. But what I find is important is that by articulating that vision, then there's kind of a self-check or a self-governing that employees will have, like you were saying. If you're able to articulate to your employees what is their why, or what is that goal, then it's a lot more easier to get people on board. I want to go through, you mentioned a book. I want to know if you could repeat that book so that we can, so that Dahlia can type that in the chat for us.
Yeah, it's called The First 90 Days. Yeah, so it's pretty straightforward. And
Okay.
I can, there's a couple of other books that I personally love. They may not be the best reads, but they're just extremely illuminating, especially if you're going down, the personal professional development route.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is Start With Why. I don't know if you guys heard of that one by Simon Sinek.
Simon Sinek, yes.
Of course, the baseline book is Think and Grow Rich, which is amazing, and As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. That's just a couple of books right there that I think has set a pretty good foundation for understanding the power of understanding self and then building up from there.
Great, thank you. And those sound like some good books. I'm familiar with most of those too. I think that is a good solid foundation. I also wanted to mention in the chat, someone said that LinkedIn has a 30-minute course on managing up that they found short but beneficial. Thank you, Janet. Thank you, Janet. So we talked a lot about the general tips for advancing your career, seeking jobs, interviewing. But we know in this current pandemic, a lot of things have changed. How, in your opinion, how's the COVID-19 pandemic changed the job seeking process? And what are the disadvantages? But also, are there any advantages? If there are any, what are some advantages in addition to disadvantages?
With stuff going remote, so many things that have the ability to be remote, you get a chance to widen your net a little bit, as far as the type of places or opportunities that you typically may not get a chance to because they're going to want somebody local, Another thing is that you can change your message or your visual of yourself digitally, and everybody see that change at the same time, which is, so you don't have to constantly repeat yourself. It's one of the reasons why I think that doing the introductory video, for example, and having that listed on YouTube or something like that so people easily get to it could be powerful because it's a message that you have put out there the best way you can. You've done it one time and you can share it with thousands of people, you know what I'm saying? So they're constantly seeing it over and over again without you having to repeat yourself. And people are more likely to engage with you visually now than they were before. So think about if you had, if they say, hey, we have an interview for you with this company, this company, and this company, and they're all on the same day, if you had to drive around, good luck with that, right? Back when you had to physically be there. But now you can sit in one spot and do all three in one place. So there are a couple of benefits. Unfortunately, since the COVID has affected the economy so much, some of those opportunities, are less than, not as easily acquirable because of the influx of people that are now looking for work. But what's happened, what COVID did was show so many organizations the cost savings and the increased or same level of production that can be offered with remote working.
That's right.
So some people are never going to see the office again, right? Because those companies, especially those medium size or the vision of some larger companies, are going to see, well, why am I paying for office space and internet and lights and coffee and all this stuff for this group of people who could really do that stuff remotely, and productivity either went up or stayed the same? What's the point, right? So your ability, so that's and it's happened for several months now. So they're going to see that benefit and they're going to take advantage of it. Plus there's going to be there's a plethora of people now that's gotten used to being home and can feed their dog at 1:30. They're getting used to go to lunch, walking over to the kitchen, used to being able to do these things now. So it's going to be real hard for especially the 60+% of this millennial crowd that's making up our workforce today. Good luck trying to pull them into the office from 8 to 5, 8 to 6, for the foreseeable future forever, because it's going to be a little difficult. So those are a couple of things I think COVID has affected. From a positive standpoint, it's going to change the way we work. Unfortunately, negatively, it has impacted our economy significantly. And, but I feel like over time we can recover from that. What I'm hearing is that by late second quarter of next year, things should be back to kind of almost how it was before from a societal standpoint. But the working world has changed now. It's in the U.S. at least. I can speak to that forever.
Yeah, my daughter, she works in Nashville at a large record label distribution company, and she's been working from home. She's 23 years old, and she's loving it. And she just got an email that they won't be going back until I think June of 2021. So, but you're right. I think people like her and other individuals, that younger part of the workforce, you're absolutely right. It's been a game changer, and it changes the culture, because now there's this virtual culture that's different from the culture I was before. And so, kind of going back to, we talked about those people who I didn't think like me or rubbed you the wrong way. Now, since everyone is working from home, it's a level playing field for this to kind of take place, to happen. And those people who wish to be in that environment working from home, now they get to choose to do so. It's going to be hard for them to go back. I absolutely agree with you. And what's so funny is that you're right. There is a higher degree of productivity. And before, like pre-pandemic, pre-COVID, there was research that already showed that people who work from home have higher degrees of productivity, right?
I didn't trust that because, it's trial and true. Think about the generational. Think about, Doc, you and I, right?
All right. Yeah, they wouldn't trust it. Yeah. Yes.
There's some things that the generation right now is doing. We didn't do that. Let's take phones, for example. Our grandparents wouldn't have never loved the cell phone thing. If I'm not home, I don't need to talk to you. That's what a phone is. I don't need you to talk to me while I'm at the grocery store, right? You and I, you okay, call us up at the grocery store, right? But now, I got to see you. I'll talk to you, but I don't have to see you. The generation after us now is saying we want to see you and talk to you, So it's just progressed over time with stuff like that. So that thought process, think about people who are still leaders and running these organizations. They weren't ready to. They had to be forced due to these times right here to kind of be pushed into, doing this now. So while COVID has been an unfortunate thing, there are some good things that can come from unfortunate scenarios. Doc, you're muted again.
Yeah, I have a question from the chat here. And I was going to say that's good. We can always find silver linings in clouds. There's a question here I want to ask from the chat because this has been asked twice. And the question is, what advice do you have for someone who is at a pivot in their career? There's some detail here too, which is what's the best approach for moving into a career in which you don't have any experience? For example, I work at a bank and it's mainly focused on customer services and sales. I want to transition my career into HR, but experience is a huge requirement in that field. What advice do you have for someone who wants to pivot in their career?
Well, I have a coaching process that I use specifically for people in that type of scenario. That's a little more detailed, but just from a high level, I can definitely tell you this. I never, and until later on in my career, I never actually qualified for the jobs that I got on paper. And the reason I got them is because actually it was a good insight that one senior VP who hired me, he told me why he hired me. This is extremely early on in my career. He said that the level of passion that I showed in the detail that I was willing to go through to do and learn the job just from the interviews that he saw me in, was something that he can't teach. and he said, I'm not on paper, you don't meet the requirements for this job, but your passion and your zeal to do this type of job, is something that I can't overlook, which you have in spades over anybody that I've run across that has the qualifications on paper. So if you're looking to make a pivot like that, it starts internally. How much does that resonate you? How much do you identify with this pivot that you're making? Because I think that I know that that's going to make a huge difference for you in being successful, because you don't need, to be attractive to 10, 20, 30 different opportunities. All you need is one, right? So no matter how many no's you get, if you're passionate about that, it resonates with you and it's an extension of yourself, then somebody who's also passionate about that thing as well is going to connect with you, and they're not going to be able to tell you no. So that's how I would start in a situation where you may not have the experience, but the passion can override that and beat out other people that otherwise would usually get that job over you.
Yeah, I like the fact that you mentioned passion, because when you want to pivot, it's not for the faint at heart. It's going to be a difficult process for most people. Like back in my former life, when I used to also do a little bit of coaching on the side, I found that sometimes if people really want to make that change, you want to be able to put up that upfront effort. What that means is that you're going to have to, especially if you don't have the credentials on paper, you're going to have to be on LinkedIn, join all those, let's use this example, human resources, join all of those HR groups. If you're a student right now, you can join the Society of Human Resource Management student chapter. So you can begin to network with a lot of different people. But again, you're going to have to do more than what other people do. And I just want to echo something that you said earlier, Rogers, about branding yourself. I think that's what's kind of good about this idea that more people who even weren't on LinkedIn are on it now, because just being exposed to this virtual landscape post COVID has allowed people to just explore LinkedIn more than they had before. I know people who never were on LinkedIn before, and now they're on LinkedIn all the time, because it's this easy transition from now I have to do Zoom, now I have to do Teams. Let me see what this LinkedIn is about that everyone's talking about, right? But LinkedIn is a great place where you can brand yourself, be involved in those conversations, curate content, post articles.
The cool thing about LinkedIn is, it's your digital resume, okay? But it can also be a place for you to position yourself as an industry influencer or an industry as an industry persona, right?
Yeah, that's it. You said it. That's what I was trying to say. You said it so much better.
So not only do you get to display your resume and your stuff there, but you can also use it as a platform to show people, okay, I don't care if you're just sharing blogs. You don't even have to necessarily write them. It'd be cool if you wrote a couple articles here and there, based on research you put together. But if you're sharing the information, or if you're commenting on stuff, or you can basically, the same way you would approach something you see viral on Facebook or something like that, take that same energy and kind of put it over here on this platform, and and show your zeal there. Like for myself, I'm connected to, let me see, 12,500 and some people on LinkedIn right now. That's how many people I'm connected to. This is individuals. And I have a couple of high influencers I follow on there. So when I post something, it's a potential that I got 12,000 people eyes that can potentially see that. If I comment on something, they're going to see my comment, because it shares that type of information when you do that. And the more you do that, and the more people you connect with, and if you're strategic, I saw somebody had put in the chat something about strategic thinking. That's that could be effective again if you've already identified who you are, your identity, and now you're just constantly feeding and evolving and displaying that identity that you are. And it can open up a lot of doors for you. I got recommendations from people I didn't even know on LinkedIn based on content and my presence that I showed on
there. Yeah. No, that's true. That can definitely happen too. And I actually have a student back in my former university. It's kind of a success story where we partnered with the career services and we did a workshop on LinkedIn and Facebook. And just by doing informational interviews, so reaching out, even cold calling people, not cold calling, but cold messaging people, asking them for their insight, looking into you can search LinkedIn by alumni for your university. You can search LinkedIn by searching by industry, just by like setting up like coffees with people saying, not asking for a job, but just saying, hey, I'm interested in this, in pivoting in this role. What are some things I need to do? Within like 6 months, she was able to find a job because
right there, man. I tell my clients, I go ahead and since you hit on it, I'm gonna go over and sell it. Like I have a template message that I use for people that I'm trying to glean information from. Now I may want to sign them on as a client ultimately, or get in front of somebody's CEO somewhere, or ultimately, but it's about first building a relationship. Let's have some virtual coffee.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's how you and I met. Folks don't know. So I'll tell my business partner, you're the coach's coach, because we connected on LinkedIn, and you blow my mind. Like, oh yeah, I need to do this for my business. I need to do this, and I got the PhD, but you helping me look at stuff in a different perspective. But that's a whole other thing. But it was through, like you said, that LinkedIn. That's how we found each other.
Right. Like honestly, I've connected with using that method. I've connected with the commissioner for Texas for state workforce commissions that way. I sat out and had breakfast with CEOs, that way. So using this type, because the thing about this, and this is a huge tip. If you don't take anything I say today down, I want you to please take this down. I'll give you a second, find something, pull your phone out, put this down. I'm serious. Take this down. If you don't remember nothing else. Everyone you interact with professionally are human beings first. They're humans. Humans have the same needs. If you appeal to the human first, it's a good chance, more than likely, you're going to have access to everything else, to a lot of other things that human has to offer. Appeal to the human and not the person that has access and wealth and knowledge and all that other stuff. Appeal to the human first. A lot of people just want to be acknowledged as human, especially the higher they're up, higher are they up, the more they have a need, because most people don't approach them as a human being. If I get a chance to sit down and talk to the CEO, especially lunch or something, whatever, guess what? He's not paying. Even if I'm a mentee, I'm going to pay for the first couple times we go to lunch on purpose, because I value them as a human and I want them to show my appreciation up front. Ask them about themselves. How can you make their world better? You want to know how to move up in your organization? Make your boss's job easier. Help them get their vision done. Help them get promoted. I've said that in interviews, and I've had to turn down jobs because I was using the method of, hey, my job is to get you promoted.
Yep, that's that managing up you talked about.
Right, exactly. That's one of the tactics you use in that. You know what I'm saying? So if you make their world easier and approach them as a human being first, think about it. I'm going to go in there flicker right quick to Dayton so they can kind of get it, because I like to make that connection. Okay, all you super ridiculously Instagram model, gorgeous women, whatever, don't you hate it when a guy just approaches you just because you're pretty? Don't you want them to come at you as a human? You're a human being. Sister, I see you having a rough time. I'm going to pray for you. They have a blessed day. Walk about, no ask you for your phone number, nothing. Oh, what do you want? You're asking for his number, problem. You know what I'm saying? You want to be treated as a human. So approach the human, your boss, your VP, whoever, deal with the human first. And a lot of times all the other stuff comes along with it after that. They just love that approach. They love being recognized.
Yeah, that's so true. So true. I have a question here from the chat. How did you discover your passion for the work you do? So you are working for the motive of passion and not money.
That's one of the things I alluded to when I did my introduction. Like I said, I'm the oldest of five, you know, and people ask me to describe myself, who I am. You know, the first thing I typically say is I'm the oldest of five brothers. You know, I take that big brother role. It's a huge part of my identity because I not just because I grew up in it because it was kind of put up on me. I loved it. I love making the path easier for people behind me, and that's that's going to come up behind me. I don't care. It expanded from just my family to almost anybody. So understanding that's my modus operandi. You know, saying my base level how I operate. I was able to over time identify what that was. Like I said, I got into coaching before coaching was even a thing. I didn't know it was even called coaching, you know. And once I did, one of the things you could do, this is going back to mastering your craft, is you immerse yourself in. You know, get in front of people that have already mastered it if you can, and immerse yourself in it. Like anybody who's learning a second language, one of the best way to do it is go immerse yourself in that particular culture as much as possible. You know, because it forces you to have that culture and those opportunities to speak that language or whatever it is rub off on you. You know, because you're all who you hang with. But that's a whole nother conversation. You know, but immerse yourself in as much as possible. You know, that way you can represent. You know, to go faster in your development that way.
So we're going to open it up for some questions, but before I do that, there's a question in the chat I want to go back to. We kind of touched on it, but I'm not sure if it was fully addressed. I asked about the passion. My next question for you was the idea of, so there was some talk about in the chat about strategic thinking. You touched on it. What advice you have on transitioning from being task-oriented thinking? And I'm assuming this is like just, you know, focusing on the minutia of the day-to-day and those things that I guess the first level employees do. Mm-hmm. How do you transition from task-oriented thinking to being more strategic thinking?
The best way to do that is to start. You are the first subject when you do that. So, like one of the things I did early on in my career when I was making the transition out of corporate America was I said, okay, I want more time to devote to my entrepreneurial preparedness, right? I wanted more time to do it to develop my course, to develop, you know, materials and stuff like that. Because at the end of work, they think about it. You get off at 5, 6 o'clock, you got sometimes a 30+ minute ride home. You want to eat something and sit down. The last thing you want to do is sit in front of a laptop again for a few more hours. You know, at least that's how it was pre-COVID. So I want to try to take some of those prime hours of the day and grab them more for myself while not doing less work, you know, at my job. So I would get any kind of negative, you know, feedback there. So that was what I was presented. So what I did, I became extremely strategic in how I manage my day, how I manage my week, how I manage the communications and my time at work, to where I got to the point where I literally finished my work at about my work day. I shifted the hours for myself from 5 p.m. to 1 p.m. My goal was to get everything needed to get done for that day done by 1 p.m. Right? So once I cut my work day almost in half, now I'm forced to get everything done between 9 and 1. You know, and for those who come in and working 9, I did like 8, 8:30 when I came in. Okay, so how can I do that? So you're forcing yourself to be strategic to get your stuff done in this time frame because you have a plan for what you're trying to do the transition, to do your transition work. And you need to be a free mind. It's going to be hard to go back and forth your daily tasks and then do that. just has to do that. Good luck with that. That multi-thinking typically doesn't work, and you can burn yourself out that way. You need to kind of keep yourself singularly focused as possible. That way, and I was able to successfully do that. At 1 p.m. it got to the point like if you don't get to Rogers by 1 o'clock, good luck with that. Because he's gonna knock out everything he needs to do by then, and after that, he's off to the next thing. But over a period of time, I was able to strategically manage my time and everything, so I met that time frame, and then was able to transition my thought process to prepare myself for the transition. So that would be my first thing, is to create what I mentioned earlier is a system for a very efficient personal system for getting things done and sticking with it. For those of us who are parents in the room, how important it is to get your child on a schedule to keep them going. You don't change much from kid to adult. You operate the same way. You're still a human being. So if you assign yourself a system to get things done in a certain time frame, you'll find a way to do it.
Yeah, I like that example, because I think a lot of people don't realize that sacrifice. Sometimes it's important to do that upfront work to create that system to make your job easier on the other side of that. But sometimes I think many of us have that challenge of doing that upfront work, or knowing what that upfront work looks like, or developing that system, because we don't take the time, or we don't have a template for it. I know for me, early in my career, I was able to, I guess, become more strategic in my thinking, even before I managed people, because of the fact that I would just model what other people did. There's no such thing as reinventing the wheel, right? I'm pretty sure when your clients come to you, you're like, hey, you want to be more strategic? You have a system you can give them, right? And that's kind of like how it was with me, being able to model other people. Okay, do as they do if you want what they want, or you want to achieve what they achieve. And so, but it takes that upfront work. It's like a good analogy is like with budgeting. I read somewhere they talked about how people don't make a lot of money. They plan their budget from week to week. Middle class, they do it from month to month. But rich people plan their budget, 1 year, 3 to 5 years out. They know what the expenses are looking like, what they want to do 3 to 5 years and now, what vacations. It's all planned out. And it makes a huge difference. Just that small switch is an analogy for strategic thinking. Instead of like doing a budget, take the time and budget the entire year out. And it makes you feel so good. You know what to do, what not to do. It's easier for you to crystallize your goals, and it's easier to change when things come up, so that without that system, you can't adapt. But if you have a system, you can kind of pivot real quick and come back, because you have a foundation to come back to. Wouldn't you agree?
Very important thing in creating this system, especially when you're going to do it out for year 1, year 2, year 3. And this is a giveaway. This is what I do with my clients. Having a singular focus, I cannot express enough how important it is in strategic thinking, in creating a system for success, in establishing goals, is to have a singular focus. Choose one goal. I mean one, for the year. Seriously. Pick one thing. I know you have your top 3, 4, 5 things you want to get done, but think about people who make these New Year's resolutions. I want to lose weight. I want to travel more. I want to do this, that, and the other. And how many of those things do they really get done in a year, if any? But if you chose one and not worry about the rest of them, just keep your focus on that one, it can open the door. It'll blow open the door for a lot of other stuff for yourself down the line. Plus, you get those endorphins from actually meeting that actually meeting that one goal. And I've seen my clients literally go from. I had one client. He went from, oh shoot, how much was this man making? He had to be making around 75,000, a year. And he was working with, I think he was working at IBM. And by the time we went through my process, but one of the major things with him was to get him on a system and focus on one type of thing to master and get done. well. And when he did that, he was able to triple his income. So he went from 175 to 75 to 150, from 150 to like 220 something a year, just within a couple of years, and it may sound far-fetched, but it's really not. So many companies have done that in how they've evolved and how they become. Apple did it. Steve Jobs came in and shut down all the other products and focused himself on just a couple products. Usually he had one main thing that he presents. And that opened the door for him to reinvest and create other things. Think about McDonald's. When McDonald's started, McDonald's did burger, fries, and a shake. That was it. That's all you had on the menu for years. Burger, fries, and shake. Master that. Get it to where you do that better than anybody else for the most part. And your ability and the proceeds from that, from doing that one thing the best, opens up the door for you to do other stuff that you want to do. So that's something I think will be huge to help you with that.
So sorry about that. I was scrolling through for some more chat questions. No, that makes a lot of sense. Focus. So the takeaways, because then you have more cognitive bandwidth, right, to devote those resources to that one thing. And so that's going to help you out tremendously. I want to ask, well, while we wait for some more questions to come into the chat, and we might end with this if we don't get any more questions, because I think we're about 10 minutes out from our end time. What are three first things, like right now, the three first things that our audience members can do tomorrow or must do tomorrow to start opening doors for them to be successful in their career? If you could narrow it down to like, what are the first three things that our audience members must do tomorrow to open doors for them to be successful in their career?
One thing is to take action now. You have to take action. If you don't take action on what you hear that could make you better within 72 hours, you lost the energy dissipates and you lose it. If you're going to do it, if you're going to make a pivot, if you're going to reaffirm yourself towards getting something done, take actionable steps right now. Don't wait. Okay. Another thing is to truly ask yourself a question without describing yourself as a student or whatever your job description is. Who are you? Find out who you are. Take a couple personality tests and take some assessments that help you do introspection. Learn yourself. That's beyond huge. Is to truly understand yourself. And another thing is to identify what you really want and take the limits off of where nobody in my family has ever had that, or my chances of getting that is nothing, is less. No. Take the limits off and just ask yourself, what do I want my career to produce for me? What is the end game? What do I want? And don't be shy about it. I found that people who could push past limiting beliefs and actually identify and write down what it is they really want and believe it and stick to it and work towards it, whether they get to it or not is typically a matter of time. It's not if it's going to happen. It's more of a when. I had a client a few years ago. He was a business analyst at a mortgage company, but he loved comics, right? And he was a comic collector. He said, man, it'll be really cool if I can, get a chance to work with Stan Lee, but that's probably too big or whatever. I was like, why? Why would that? Why not? Why don't you just start? I walked him through the process of identifying self in the comic field. I walked through the process of immersion. I walked through those processes, and over time, he actually got to work with Stan Lee before he died. He was the person sitting next to Stan Lee at Comic-Con in San Diego, signing off on stuff in his name before Stan Lee passed. And within a matter of about 4 to 5 years.
Wow.
So limitations literally are only self-imposed. And I stole that from George Bernard Shaw.
Man, that's amazing. You know, there's a saying. I want to say that Henry Ford said it. I'm not sure, so don't hold me to the quote. But they said if you believe you can, or if you believe that you can't, you're right. You know, it's all about how you believe. You know, and that's so true. Yeah. So so it looks like there are no more questions in the discussion board right now. There were some hands that were raised. I'm not sure if they were raised by accident. So if your hand was raised and I lowered your hand and you have a question that you want to ask Rogers Vigne, just post it in the chat right now, and we'll wait a few minutes for that, because I guess we can always edit this out if it's any, what do you call it, some uncomfortable silence.
Yes, it's okay.
All right, so it's nothing there. So great, man. Rogers, thank you so much. Like I said, you're the coach's coach. Thank you for speaking to my students, being a guest at the College of Business at Texas Women's University, and I hope that. Oh, let me put this back in the chat again for everyone.
Yes.
If you could tell everyone where they can reach you at, and while you do that, I'll post this information in the chat for you.
Sure. So my website is mdself.com, you know, so it's extremely interactive. You know, you have questions on there. There's me on there answering questions. Just clicking and I'll answer it via video. In the lower right-hand corner of the website, you can set up a free consultation. If that's something that you want to have a conversation with me for a few minutes, you're welcome to do that. I believe they're putting my information in the chat. So, you know, phone number, email address, that stuff is there. My company is called My Digital Self Career Coaching Agency. Just as a quick quick story, kind of exit story. The reason it's called My Digital Self, I actually stole the concept from the movie The Matrix. For those who are fellow movie and comic nerds along with me, there's a particular scene in the movie The Matrix where Lawrence Fishburne, who's playing Morpheus, is explaining to Neo, who Keanu Reeves is playing, what the Matrix is he's in this all white area, and he's telling him what the Matrix is. He says that in this place, you notice that you look different. You know, your connections in your head and your arms are gone. Your clothes are different. Your hair is different. This is how you look in here. The reason why you look different in here than you do in the real world, because in here, this is your mental projection of your digital self. This is how you see yourself in your mind. So that becomes reality in here, right? So I love the concept of my digital self because we become what we think about. Stole that from Earl Nightingale, you know, but literally you become how you see yourself in your mind if you believe it and you work towards that. So I love that concept. I named my company My Digital Self because of that. And that's where that comes from.
Man, awesome. That's a great analogy. Thank you for sharing that. Man, so again, I want to thank you for joining us, Rogers Vigne. Thank you, Dahlia, for assisting us with the chats. And as I always say to my audience members, enjoy the rest of your day. Peace out from Dr. J.